Well, this tutorial is going to be a little boring. It's the first in a series on Python 3. My viewers voted and they seem to really want to have some more Python tutorials, and it was recommended that I do tutorials on Python 3, which is something I am not very experienced in. But looking at it, the little that I have, it's fairly similar to Python 2. But we'll have a quick look at it, and as we go on in the series, we'll see some of the differences. But first off, obviously getting it installed. I'm not really going to go through how to install it, because if you're a programmer, hopefully you know how to install software, but it should be in your repositories if you're on a Linux system. But take into account that on most Linux systems, Python is already installed, but by default, it's probably going to be Python 2 something, 2.6, 2.7. And that's because there are just so many programs that are dependent on it, because Python 2 and Python 3 are not compatible with each other. So you still have to have Python 2 for all those programs that are already written in Python 2. But Python 3 should be in your repositories, and you can have both installed at the same time. I'm on a Debian-based system. I like using Aptitude, but obviously use whatever package manager you're most comfortable with. But if we quickly do an Aptitude search, if you're on Ubuntu, you can use apt-get or apt-cache or whatever it is. Or you can just install Aptitude, or use the GUI interface, the software manager, or whatever they call it. And I type in Python, and we just search through Python. It gives me a list of all packages with Python somewhere in the title. And you can see there's a whole bunch. And that's because a lot of these are modules that you can also install. That your distribution luckily has provided for you, so you don't have to go out and get them yourselves. If we scroll up enough, you can see that we get into Python 2. I'm running Debian SID, and it's now September of 2013 when I'm recording this. And you can see 2.7, which is what is probably installed on my system by default. You can see that Python 3 is available, and you can see indicated by the I here that it is installed. But the Python 3 package is actually pointing to a specific Python 3 package, and in this case, it is Python 3.3. You can also see we have some Python 3.2 in here as well. But in this particular case, if I just install Python 3, it's going to point to whichever one on your distribution is set as the default for Python 3. So you could type in and install Python 3.3, or just do Python and it'll install whatever is set as the default. I doubt there's too much of a difference between 3.2 and 3.3. So installing just it's probably going to, or Python 3 is going to install whichever is probably the best at that point on your distribution. Once that's installed, I can type in Python to get into the Python interpreter, and what you'll see what happens is when I do that, it defaults to Python 2.7, because even though I have both installed by default, Python 2 is my default. I can hit Control-D to get out of that, and if I actually type in Python 2, it's going to bring that up. So I can type in Python or Python 2, and it'll bring that up. So if I want to work with the Python 3, you can make Python 3 the default interpreter. I think that might probably screw up some of your applications that you probably have installed, but I'm not going to look into that too much. But just know, if you want to get into the Python 3 interpreter and it's not set as your default Python interpreter, you're going to want to type in Python 3. And as you can see, instead of Python 2.7.5, I've got Python 3.3.2 here. And of course, you could probably have different versions of Python 3 installed. You can have Python 3.2 and Python 3.3. And here it's saying this is the default when you type in Python 3. If you had both Python 3.2 installed and Python 3.3, and you type in Python 3, this is going to be the default. You're going to have to type in Python 3.2 to get 3.2. I just want to make that clear. That's kind of one of the main points of this tutorial, is that be sure you're using the right interpreter for the code you're writing. Now again, we're not going to get too much into programming today. We're just looking at the introduction, the main screen, what happens when you run it here. So we run the interpreter here, and it tells us, what version that that in this particular case, this is the default for Python 3 on my system. It tells you when it was built. So you can see this one was built on September 17th. It's actually September 20th. So this was built just a couple of days ago. Again, I'm running Debian SID, which is the unstable version of Debian. So I probably have newer packages than those running a stable version, Wheezy, or if you're running Ubuntu, it's probably not this new. But then again, by the time you watch these videos in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, or if you're watching it years down the road, you might be ahead of this. Anyway, it tells you when this was compiled, the time that it was compiled, and it tells you what compiler was used, in this case GCC 4.8.1 on a Linux system. So that's just what the Debian package maintainers used and when they compiled it for this package in the repositories for Debian SID at this time. So just a little info there for you at the beginning. But then there's things you can type to get more information. So the first one here is help. Now if we type help, it's going to tell us type help with parentheses. And this is the same for Python 2 as well. As you can see up here, it's going to give you mostly the same information. But it's telling you type in help with parentheses for an interactive help, or help and then inside the parentheses the object that you want help about. So what we can do is we can type in help and parentheses, and let's say we want to get the help page, which is kind of like a man page manual on the print command. So I can type print, but it's asking for a string, so you got to put it in quotations, either single or double. It shouldn't matter. We'll hit enter there, and here's just quick little help on print. To get out of this, I can hit Q. Again, I can, once again, I hit up arrow to go back to the last command, just like most shell environments. And here, one of the modules that's available is the OS module. I can hit enter, and you can see this is a longer help page. So I can use my arrows to go up and down. It's basically probably using less to display this. So arrows up and down. I can hit enter to go down one line at a time. And if I hit spacebar, it's going to jump pages. And of course, at any time in here, I can hit Q and it'll bring me back out. Now, another option, rather than typing help and then the object in parentheses, is just type help with the parentheses and nothing in it. I hit enter there, and it actually brings us into an interactive help prompt, which is basically the same thing. It's just another way of doing it. So I'm in here, and now instead of typing out help parentheses, inside parentheses, quote, and print, I can just type in print. And you can tell that you're in the help interface because our prompt and the default interpreter is 3 greater than symbols, and you can see now it is a greater than symbol with a prefix of help. So I can just type in print, and it brings up the print. Again, I can hit Q to get out of that. I can type in OS, and it'll bring up the information, the help on the module for OS. You can scroll down again, just like before. Q to get out of that. Another option would be the sys module. So basically, you know, a majority of modules, you'll be able to just get a help file like this. Again, Q to get out of that. And here I can hit Q and hit enter as well to go back to the main prompt for the interpreter. And again, to get out of the interpreter, you're going to hit Control D. That will bring you back to your default shell on your system, whatever that may be. Going back into Python 3, our next thing it tells us we can type is copyright. And if we type copyright, we'll hit enter, and it'll bring up copyright. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who are on Linux systems or other Unix-like or Unix systems, I'm not sure about Mac OS, anytime you can usually highlight something and center click to paste. So that's what I did there. Or you can just type out copyright. So it brings up copyright information. Now, there's probably going to be some viewers that are a little confused because people get very confused when it comes to copyrights, licenses, and patents. And it can be confusing at certain times, but some of you are probably going now, and not all of you, but some of you are probably going, wait, there's a copyright? I thought that Python was free and open source software. And it is free and open source software. But just because something's open source doesn't mean that it doesn't have a copyright. It just means it's under a license that is open and or free. Because when you create something, automatically you have a copyright on it. The copyright the copyright laws change, I think, in the 80s sometime. That as soon as you create something, you have a copyright on it. Now, you could throw it out in the public domain. Some people choose to do that. Some people want, to keep control of what they create, and that's why they put licenses on it. Licenses just basically tell you what you can and can't do with it. And a common license would be the GPL license, which Python is not under, and we'll get into that in a minute. But the copyright says this person has the rights to what they've created, and the license tells you what you can and can't do with it. So we'll get to that. Real quick, we'll look at the credits, since that's the next one on the list. It just gives you some quick credits here. For more information, python.org. But next we'll say license. And again, I'm just going to double-click to highlight that and center-click on a Linux system. If you're on Windows, you're going to have to copy and paste it. So anyway, we'll hit enter there. It's going to tell us to put in parentheses to bring up the full license text. First thing that comes up here is the history of the Python software, and it gives you just a quick history here. You can read the bottom line here. It says hit return or enter for more, or Q to quit. So I will hit enter, and we'll go down a little bit, and it's just giving us a brief history. Oop, I went past where I want, and there's no back on this that I know of. So I'm going to hit Q to get out of that. I'm going to hit up arrow a few times, go back into license, and I'm going to go down a few times. Now you'll see here in the footnotes of the history, you'll see the word, the acronym GPL. So a lot of people might look at this real quick and go, oh, it's under the GPL license, but actually read what it says, because it's not under the GPL. It actually says that it's not, that GPL compatible does not mean that it's distributed under the GPL license. I guess that's kind of repetitive saying GPL license, since the L stands for license. Anyway, Python is released under a Python license, not a GPL license. Now, once again, there's lots of different licenses out there. When you have a copyright on some software or some sort of art or something, you can release it under whatever license you want, and you can make your own license. Like Microsoft has their own license for stuff. I may not like it, you may not like it, but they have it. The GPL license is just a license that the Free Software Foundation made for you, so you don't have to write up a license. You can read it and go, hey, I like this license. I'm just going to put it on my software. And there's different versions of it. There's other licenses out there. Python uses a Python license, which is GPL compatible. And there's certain criteria you have to meet to be GPL compatible. And I like using software that's released that's GPL compatible. And everyone has different opinions, and there's different instances where one license might be better than another. I personally like to use the GPL license. I like to use GPL version 3 currently on anything I write. Well, the the Python license, unlike the GPL license, lets you distribute and modify versions without making changes open source. So basically, if I create a program, and this is kind of getting off the topic of just Python, but I want to make this clear. When I create a program and I release under the GPL, other people are free to use it and share it as long as they make the source code available. And if they make changes, their source code also has to be open. Python license is not like that. I can take Python, I can make changes to it, and my portion of that can be under a proprietary license. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to share the source code. You may not like that. I'm not a huge fan of that, but that's something other people are doing, and in my mind, I'm not going to use that closed source stuff, in my code. I'm going to stick to the Python code, which is open, and anything I add to it or create with it is going to be under an open license. So I just want to make that clear that that this is not a GPL license. This is under, and if we go down a little bit further, you can see now we start actually getting into the license, and you may want to read through that. But for the most part, it's Python. It's going to be a fairly open license. But there's when you talk about the software changes not having to be open source, lots of times big business like that, Microsoft could take Python, make changes to it, and they don't have to share what they change, where if it was under the GPL license, they would have to. And there's a lot of other things to look at when it comes to licenses, but that's a big portion of it, and that's what they mentioned in the footnotes. So that's important to them, so I thought I'd point that out. So again, I can type in quit or Q to get out of this, or if I just keep hitting enter, when I hit the bottom of the license, it's going to bring me back to the main prompt here. And again, to get out of the interpreter here, Control D, and I'm now out of the Python interpreter. So this first tutorial was less of a tutorial, more just an introduction, but it's just to give you a little introduction. It might be a little dry. First few tutorials are going to be very basic stuff. If you're familiar with Python or have done any type of programming before, the first few tutorials are probably going to be pretty boring. And this is going to be a series that's going to be going over the next couple of months. Once again, this is the end of September that I'm recording this, so sometime in October I'm going to start this series. And right now, actually, as I'm recording this, people are voting on what this next series is going to be, but Python is so far ahead, I figured I'd get a head start on recording these videos. So keep watching. Every Wednesday for the next couple of months, there's going to be a new Python 3 tutorial just on basic stuff. And then so if you're watching this now, there should be an annotation on the screen that will bring you to the playlist. If you go to it now, right when I release this, this is going to be the only video. And in a week, there's going to be another video. So you might be like, and I get this all the time, how come your series just stopped? They're not stopped. They're just not complete. Come back next week. There'll be another video. So, yes, if you're watching this in 2013, the playlist probably isn't finished yet. Come back, subscribe. Every Wednesday there'll be a new Python video. I also have different videos on Mondays and Fridays as well. So I hope you subscribe and stick around. But look forward to those videos. If you're watching this 6 months from now, the series is probably done. You can watch it all at once. Good for you. And yeah, next week we'll start getting into just basic stuff. We'll look at the print command. Things I like to go over whenever I start tutorials or I'm learning a new language. The main things, there's 4 or 5 main things that I learn first, and that's what I'll be teaching you. Output, which will be the print command displaying stuff to the screen. Input, retrieving something from a user. Variables, which actually would come before the input because the input has to go into a variable. And then reading and writing to files. So these first few videos we're going to look at displaying, we'll say, a question to the screen. Then we'll get into retrieving that question, putting it in a variable, saving it to a file, and then reading that file. Those are going to be the first few things we go over. Then we'll get into other stuff like math, and we'll see where the tutorials lead us from there. So I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please visit filmsbychris.com. That's Chris with a K. There should be a link in the description to that. When you go to my site up at the top, on the site, you can search through my videos. There's a search bar there to search through the videos. There's a playlist search there, so you can search through the playlists. And then there's also a drop down at the top that will show you and give you links to my Google Plus page, my Facebook page, Twitter account, and also a link to the IRC channel, which is the place where you're going to want to ask questions if you have questions. Below there are comment boxes. The comment boxes are great for comments. They are horrible for trying to answer technical questions. So if you have questions, I ask that you come to the IRC channel, because if you ask them in the comments below, there's a good chance I'm not going to see them because I have so many videos. I don't have time to read all the comments. So it may not be read. Maybe someone else will answer it, but there's a good chance I won't. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that to let you know if you want to ask me a question, come to the IRC channel. And also, if you come to the IRC channel, I am not always in there. There's a bunch of people that are always logged in, but they're not always right at the computer. If you come to the IRC channel, come to the IRC channel to hang out, to be part of the community. Don't come in there thinking that this is, a help chat line that you're going to ask a question and get it answered right away. It might take a couple of minutes, a couple of hours. Might not get answered till the next day, but come in, log in, stay logged in, chat with us, and if you can't get an answer there, there are channels for Python that you might get an answer. You'll probably get an answer pretty quickly. So you might want to go to a Python specific page, but feel free to come and join us in the IRC channel. It's on Freenode, # Films by Chris. Once again, Chris with the K. The link on the page will bring you to a web interface. And that's about it. I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you have a great day.